You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
What is most holy? The wall, the mosque, the sepulchre? Who has claim? None have claim. All have claim. We don't fight to protect these walls, but the people living in these walls. If you guessed it, you're right. We're talking about the kingdom of heaven. Welcome back to the SG Drive-In. Excited to be here again. I am Joshua Knoll. You might be able to tell I have a little bit of a sinus infection, probably sound a little nasally compared to usual. I apologize, but we had to get it done. And I'm here with the one and only, my partner for our SG Drive-In Challenge, Nick Polk. How's it going, Nick?
I'm good, dude. I'm super glad to be here, and your nasally voice just kind of makes you sound like a lead character. Yes, nasally.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, lead character in like a movie, like a mid-2000s action movie.
Perfect. Yeah. If you have not been following along, this is the first one in your drive-in for some reason, or you didn't listen last year. Last year we did a drive-in, and everybody had to pick a movie from their birth year. Was the challenge. This year we paired everyone up. Everybody gets one pick, and it can't be from a franchise, which is why I didn't pick Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, because those are good. Instead, I went with my favorite summer blockbuster that's not part of a franchise, The Kingdom of Heaven, starring Orlando Bloom, Liam Neeson. Who's the director? Do you remember the director off the top of your head?
Ridley Scott.
Okay, yeah, I knew it was somebody awesome because he did Gladiator, right?
Uh-huh.
God, this movie, so cool, so underrated, and we all missed it when it first came out because of what I would say is because of just honestly awful timing.
Yeah.
If it had come out 4 years earlier, I think it would have blown up. But here we are. We're talking about it. It's been enough time that we're able to look back and go, man, this was a good film. So, Nick, one thing we like to do for these, we like to pretend. You and I just got in the car. We went to the drive-in. We watched Kingdom of Heaven on the big screen from the car, just chilling. You know, we're in our car. We probably could have your pipe with your special Tolkien blend.
Absolutely.
You know, we can't have alcohol, so I probably don't have the Brothers Bond bourbon I told you about. Probably have a Coca-Cola, you know, some snacks.
I'd probably have a Coke with you as well. Maybe some popcorn, you know, smoking our pipes. Yeah. I mean, it probably pairs pretty well.
Yeah, good time. Yeah, I feel like we'd have to finish the food first, or else it'll just taste like tobacco, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
I feel like that scent gets on everything.
Popcorn first with the Coke to wash down the smoke burn.
Yeah, perfect. So we finished the movie. You look to me, and what's the first thing you say after watching this movie?
Dude, that was so good.
Yeah, man. I was like, I'm a little bit of a history geek.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of the history geeks that's like, oh, this wasn't accurate, so I'm mad. I'm one of those who's like, I'll focus on the positives, right? Like, so a lot of the details they got weren't right.
Right.
But the actual battles, like how the battles would have been fought, when it would have taken place, all that, spot on. I don't even know what the first thing I would say is. Like, I think I was speechless after I watched it. First time I actually saw the film wasn't in a drive-in, and I didn't see the regular cut. I actually didn't see the regular cut until this time around when we both watched it. Originally, the first thing that I saw was the extended cut on Blu-ray. My friend had it, and as soon as I finished it, I was like, it wasn't enough somehow. Like, yeah. It was like a 2-hour, 40-long experience, and I was like, I need more. And on the Blu-ray, they had a History Channel episode that they did explaining some of the stuff behind it. So they went through what kind of armor everybody would have had, what was right or not right about where the war took place and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is so cool. Crusades are already like one of my favorite times of history to study.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like a glutton for punishment. I like seeing where my people messed up. You know, like I like the parts of American history where we messed up. I like the parts of church history where we messed up. Not because I'm like, oh, I like feeling bad about myself, but just kind of like, I feel like that's where we can learn the most, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was really neat too, because you always forget. I mean, I always forget it generally of like how many cultures like intermingled in like the global travel and conflict that took place. Like, I think I'd kind of forgotten, but like at the end of the movie, when, you know, King Richard is on his way to do the Crusades again, and he's like, and Orlando Bloom's like, oh, you have to go down where they speak Italian and then keep going until they speak something else. You're like, oh yeah, they have to like travel across Europe into freaking Africa. Wait, sorry, not Africa, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No,
it really is one of those like really fascinating things, because even like when you travel by ship at that point, you don't have motorized ship, so it's like only certain currents really work the way you want it to. So like kind of the way they brought that out was really cool too. There was a lot of just little neat history stuff. So even if they didn't get all the stuff accurate, they still did enough little nods to how things would have worked that it felt real to me.
I felt the
And
same way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So let's do some preliminary work. This movie, as far as like the plot and stuff, could you break it down for those who haven't seen it? What is the Kingdom of Heaven about?
So the Kingdom of Heaven is about this blacksmith who is Orlando Bloom. He's chilling in England, in a poverty-stricken England, because right now England and the church has an established kingdom in Jerusalem because they've taken over. And Liam Neeson is on his way back to England to find his son, which, surprise, surprise, is Orlando Bloom. And Orlando Bloom, as a redemption story to redeem himself, joins with his newly found dad. And he ends up going to Jerusalem and kind of seeks redemption for his sins and tries to find a new life, but ends up getting a little bit more than what he bargained for, with a quite literally international conflict politically and religiously. Yeah.
It's interesting. So the movie takes place between the Second and Third Crusade.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I just never like thought about it. But like all of the Crusades are the Christians going in attacking Jerusalem. So obviously someone had to take over in between each time, or else why are we going there again?
Right.
Yeah. So it's one of those. And I was like, okay, this movie really inspired me to study more of the like in between. And one thing this movie doesn't get right, but I think it's okay that it didn't get right, because I think it makes its point better, was it wasn't just, oh, we want the land. It's also Christians were being treated terribly in Jerusalem. It was bad. So it was a little bit of vengeance, a little bit of we're better than you, our God's real, yours isn't, but also a little bit of, we can't let our people suffer.
Yeah. It was interesting too, just to think about, because obviously it's very modern thinking about like religious pluralism, where they're like, oh, we're going to exist together in peace. And like when the knights are like, oh, I don't really believe in God, like that is a very modern shoehorning of like, that would have not been a thing.
Yeah, that would probably be one of my big complaints with the movie, but yeah.
I like the message behind it, but yeah.
Oh yeah. But there are things like Orlando Bloom's character where you see a lot of people who are religious, but they're not really fanatical.
Yeah.
Which I have to imagine that was probably always a thing. I don't know what it would have looked like, but there was probably always people who were like, I go to church because you have to, and that's pretty much the extent of it. Like, you do this because you have to, and that's he doesn't spend a lot of time studying theology. But I think for me, and this is part we're going to get to a little bit later, but part of like what's missing from the theatrical cut, this in the extended cut, and I don't remember exactly how much of it is missing, but at the beginning, a priest has his wife and child beheaded because then they can't rise up to heaven according to the beliefs at that time.
Right.
You can't be burned. If you're cremated, your body can't rise because there is no body. If you're beheaded, it won't rise. Right. It's just sort of the belief. So the priest who had his wife and child beheaded and kind of like did that terrible thing at the beginning, that's his half brother.
Oh,
so they had this whole feud their whole lives.
Really?
And that's where he gets like pissed and kills the guy. And then he's like, well, I killed him and now I need to make amends for killing my half brother who did this. Like, there's a lot of like family drama there. And to me, I think that bit really builds his motivation a lot better. Like, I like that a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know that was his half brother. I noticed that the guy who plays the priest is Michael Shannon, though, who I feel like has kind of become more prominent. I feel like he got to start mid 2000s as like side characters. And then,
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's funny, too, because like I feel like most of the time when you tell people about Kingdom of Heaven, you're like, there's Liam Neeson or Orlando Bloom. They're like, there's a movie with those two in it that I haven't seen. Like, most people are just shocked they haven't seen
That's
it.
literally how I felt when you texted me. And I was like, whoa, this cast is incredible.
Yeah, it really has just flown under the radar. But so we kind of mentioned our relationship to the film already a little bit, just kind of getting into that. This was your first time seeing it, correct?
It was, yeah. Literally watched it probably like 2 hours before our episode here.
Perfect. Perfect. So the other thing I wanted to bring out with the director's cut that a lot of people like who are like, oh, the director's cut's infinitely better. A lot of people will like rate them separately. Like out of 10, the theatrical cut people will be like, maybe 5 out of 10. And then they'll be like, director's cut's like 8 out of 10. I'd rate both a lot higher personally, but which we'll get to. But the other thing was Sibylla.
Oh, the queen
name right now for some reason. Yeah, she has a son. They completely cut the whole character out of the movie.
Oh, like in the director's cut, there's a son?
Yeah. She has a son in the movie, and that's part of like why it's so hard for them to get together and figure stuff out because she has a child.
Weird.
So it's like there's all this whole layer to like their relationship that's still in the movie. That's like it kind of feels awkward if you don't understand. That's like no. There is a lot of like tension here because she has a kid. And
is it with Orlando Bloom's character or
no.
okay, it's the king's character or the.
Yeah. For those wondering, Sibylla was married to the king, but kind of had this like love affair type thing with Orlando Bloom's guy, and naturally he couldn't just kill the king and be like, all right, we're married now because A, that's bad, and B, she had a kid.
Okay. I'm kind of sad he didn't do it though.
Yeah, me too.
But it makes for an interesting story.
I don't really get into romance that much.
Yeah.
So if Pang's listening, you're welcome. That particular story of those two, though, I was really getting into it. I was like, I could have seen more of that. That was interesting.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets because they cut it off pretty, I only watched the theatrical release, but I think like you said, there's a whole, because that was probably my one biggest thing where I felt like the dynamics between them was kind of off. And like you said, that's probably because they cut out a whole separate familial aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which part of why they cut it. So 2005, it's not right after September 11.
Right.
But when they were making the movie, that was on everybody's mind. Everybody still, and I mean, even to this day, a lot of people still have a lot more prejudice about Islam and Middle Eastern peoples than we did before 9/11.
Right.
So it really changed a lot, like the original vision to what ended up on screen, because they were like, people don't really want to see Middle Eastern people as not evil right now.
I know. I was really surprised that was how it was portrayed in 2005. I was like, dang, this is like humanizing, and like it doesn't make Muslims to look like complete tribal savages or something that most series or movies did back then.
Yeah, well, and it's I'm understanding a lot of it is because the director was atheist.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember his name again. What is wrong
Ridley
with me?
Scott, yeah.
Thank you. Ridley Scott, yeah. So which is funny, he kind of had a bias against Christians, and it does come out in this.
Sure.
But I think it makes for a better movie. Because, or maybe it's just, my bias, because I'm coming to this going, man, there is so much I learned from this on like how we treat other people, what our priorities actually are. The whole reason that Balin goes over to Jerusalem is, he has all the sin, he wants to repent. And the church at the time was saying, the way to make up for your sins, you can do penance by going on these crusades, by going to Jerusalem, like specific locations, fighting the Islamic peoples, that was what the church was telling people.
Right.
And mind you, in those times, it's not like he could have just cracked open his Bible and read, that's not what it says. They just have to trust that the church is telling the truth.
Yeah, this is pre-Protestant Reformation. Yeah. Like it's like the Catholic Church. That's it.
Yeah. So from that perspective, it's like, this is just truth. Now, actual historical account, I think Balin actually was born in Jerusalem. So it's a very different story in real life.
Yeah.
But for the movie's purposes, I think it helps a lot to remember. Yeah, pre-Protestant Reformation. So we're talking about what we loved and what we didn't love. What did you think specifically of the character of Balin?
I liked him. He kind of plays like the classic quiet guy who lost everything, who has to like redeem himself. Like I feel like that was just very popular. It's just a popular trope. So I think it's a very modern trope. And so I think that aspect is probably kind of like was overplayed, but I think the way that it develops in his character specifically and the specific situation is pretty unique and made the story interesting. Yeah, so that's where I disliked, but then it turned into something I liked.
Yeah, I honestly I felt like it was one thing that made it easier to watch the theatrical version was he didn't seem as mopey.
Oh, in the theatrical one or the director's?
Yeah, theatrical. He doesn't seem as mopey to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a matter of, which mind you, usually I hate whiny characters. I wouldn't classify him as whiny.
No, he's definitely not
I
whiny.
think mopey is different. Yeah.
Yeah. He's definitely brooding, silent type.
Yeah. I think the big difference is like, which most people probably be fine with this. The director's cut, whenever they made it for the theatrical thing, one of the first things you cut is all that like empty time. So, when someone's just reflecting on their thoughts or just sitting in sadness, well, that's an easy thing to cut,
Yeah.
And the director's cut, no, they don't do that. You see him really linger a lot. So it's like, oh, he just feels a little more sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, something about that for me also was helpful to like have that broken kind of sad character who's out to redeem himself, not because anger and revenge necessarily, and not because like he's super churchy, but because he's hurt. Well, and something about that really speaks to me.
Yeah, and it's weird, like you said, he takes responsibility for his actions, and in the movie he's like kind of ambivalent about religion. It's very much just kind of about responsibility and honor and things like that, knighthood or whatever.
Yeah, which was really part of why I liked the main antagonist, I guess you'd say, was Saladin.
Yeah.
I liked his character a lot too, because even when those two interacted, it was very much honor, respect for one another kind of stuff, because Saladin, he was leading the Islamic army, whatever, all that. Obviously, he was religion, but you could tell like his priority is his people, right. Honor, respect, and doing kindness in return when kindness is done to him. It's kind of a big part of his story.
Yeah, I love that aspect where as soon as, they do that battle at Carrick or whatever, and he's brought to it and you hear the sword come down, you're like, oh, okay. It's that guy that he decided. What's his name? Saladin?
Saladin, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Saladin, one of the two.
Right, that's the same guy.
Not,
right? Or not the leader
linguistic experts.
Yeah, not the leader of Islam, right? Or is it the guy that he didn't kill at the beginning?
I think it's the guy he didn't kill at the beginning.
Okay.
I think. I could be mistaken. If so, I apologize. Guys, go watch it.
Yeah, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah. There is a character that he chooses not to kill, who in return chooses not to kill him later on. 2 separate fights, and they don't know who one another is. Like when he first meets this guy, he doesn't know he's a big guy on the other guy's army. He just knows it's some dude and chooses to show him grace, basically. And then later, when they are in an army and they know who each other is, they're in a situation where he could have killed Balin and was like, no, you listen, you did right by me, I do right by you.
Right.
It's kind of like the golden rule that's in every single religion.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, do unto others kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, so we talk about Balin. What about, honestly, I feel like he wasn't even that huge of a character, but because Liam Neeson played him, we got to talk about Godfrey. What did you think of Godfrey's character and his kind of arc?
I liked him. I think that he's like haunted by his past and he's really trying to make things better. And, he ends up, in doing so, he ends up losing his life. And then tries to instill some of the wisdom that he had come upon late in life to his, his new son. And I really like when he knights him and then slaps him, and he's like, and that's to remember all the stuff I told you to, And I loved his character. It was sad that he was gone so soon.
Oh yeah, it was like I have the oath. And it was so funny because it's like really serious. He's dying. It's be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright, that God may love thee. Speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong. And then, leans in and just smacks him across the face. And that's how you remember it. I'm like, yeah, perfect.
Absolutely loved it.
Yeah. And doesn't Balin do that to somebody else later on too?
Yeah, it's like a kid because he knights like literally every peasant in Jerusalem and then slaps a kid.
Slaps him.
I think both of them drew blood too. They weren't just like little slaps. They like drew blood with their slaps.
Smacked the fire out of people. Yeah, man. Liam Neeson is so Liam Neeson in this. Like 100%. I don't know how to say that any other way. That it's like it's exactly who you think Liam Neeson plays.
100%.
And I like that it was. One thing I did like about Godfrey's character though was, if you kind of read into it, you're like really paying attention. His character slept around, spread his seed kind of deal, was kind of not the best, but because he was a crusader, he went to Jerusalem, he fought on the right side of the army, he kind of got all that signed off, and yet he still felt guilty.
Yeah.
So he was still trying to make amends, not because the church said he had to, but because he was like, yeah, this still isn't right. And I think in that time and age when like the church basically is God, that is actually says a lot about someone's character, that they can see past that even a little bit.
Yeah. And that's one of the aspects I love about the movie, because that's, like I said before, that's more of a modern shoehorning, because that wouldn't have been something I don't think even somebody back then could probably conceive of. But like you said, it's that moving past that, and it's very much like, oh, my character, like I can't just depend on the privilege that, institutional forgiveness and pardons can give me, because it's still not going to, rectify what I've done.
Speaking of those historical inaccuracies, Balin was not only born in Jerusalem, he also was not a bastard.
Oh, really?
He came from a married family. So I don't know if it was actually Godfrey or not, but and the reason that's important is he literally could not have inherited the land.
That's what I was about to ask you.
If he was not from a legitimate marriage, yeah. But just fun facts. I think it served the purpose of the movie really well, and I couldn't see them being self-conscious enough to know why they felt guilty, but I could see some crusaders still feeling guilty and trying to figure out why. Like I could see that maybe that being a thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that rejected type of like marginalization of like, being a bastard. They do it with Lord of the Rings too, or Aragorn is, far away and is kind of orphaned, but in the books, he's very much like, this is my kingdom. I'm born into this and I'm ready. Yeah. And in the books, he's like, oh, I've rejected this life and people are pissed at me and I have to like prove myself. And it's like, no, but I think I think people like that, or it sells well or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about Saladin. What did you we talked about the romance between him and Sibylla, but what did you think of her as like a character? Was she really interesting to you or anything?
Unfortunately, not really with the thing, because
I was gonna say like I didn't.
It was one of those things that like, besides her being the king's sister for the French dude to come into power, like I don't understand. Like she really didn't do anything except kind of be a side piece for Orlando Bloom.
Yeah, I think even in the extended cut, like the most you really get character-wise from her, in my opinion, and this is like the reason I bring it up is because I wish they would have done more with some of the female characters. Even given the time, obviously it wouldn't have happened, but it's kind of like, you made some other stretches. You could have done it.
Yeah.
I think in the extended cut, they kind of imply she wants the king to die because she thinks he's going to lead to the fall of Jerusalem, and she's worried about her son. And that one little piece that maybe was like hidden in there a little bit kind of brought a little bit of character, but for the most part, she's more of a plot device, I feel like, than anything.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. And I really didn't like how, like, and I feel like especially because this was right around when Britney Spears kind of had her mental breakdown.
Oh,
and cinema did that, where they're like, oh, how do we indicate how a woman is, losing her mind or in a rough place? Shave her head. And she did that. And I did it. I was like, that's lame.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I didn't really like it.
Also, yeah, because I know we were talking about this in context of 9/11 and some of the other stuff too, and it came out in 2005. Just want to remind everybody, once upon a time, before the MCU, not blaming the MCU on this, just it was before then, movies didn't really pop out. Like, we're going to start filming this year and it's going to be done next year. Like that wasn't really a thing.
Right.
Yeah. There's even like your planned trilogies that were filmed straight through, like Star Wars, there's a few years between. Like it's not something that was able to be done that quickly.
Yeah, years
early
before.
Yeah. So did this for you? How did this movie sit? Like overall, if you had to rate it like 0 to 10, or like or even if you just had to like talk about how it impacted you, if you don't feel like rating it, because I feel like it's one of those. It's more about the message than necessarily just entertainment.
Yeah,
but I think we could do both. We could probably talk about both.
I think I'd give it a solid 8. I really enjoyed it. Like, I think the action was cool. The shots were neat. It's very much in that early 2000s kind of action movie stuff. But I think the messages was like, I was like, man, I am sad that I didn't see it till now, but I'm also kind of simultaneously happy because I was like 13 or something. So I wouldn't have gotten the nuances of that. And, just growing up in an evangelical Christian home right after post 9/11 in the United States, I would have been like, oh, this is making Muslims look peaceful. That's wrong. Instead of now where I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I'm surprised that there's somebody promoting like, oh, the kingdom of heaven is called this in the movie because there's peace among Christians, Muslims, and Jews in the Holy Land, which is like unheard of, you know? So I love that aspect of the movie.
Yeah, I always have such a hard time when I tell people this is one of my favorite movies because people just assume that a Christian talking about a movie called Kingdom of Heaven, it's a Christian movie. And they're like, I don't really like Christian movies. And I'm like, it is definitely not a Christian movie.
Right.
It is rated R for a reason. And it was very obviously directed by someone who's not religious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'd probably give it a 9.
Okay.
And I know I said
like
this is my favorite outside of franchises.
Yeah.
I do give some things a 10, but they're all in franchises. They're mostly Indiana Jones movies. No, I'm just kidding. There's at least one that I'd give a 10 though. But I really enjoy the movie overall. It's for me, just I get a lot out of it emotionally. The music of the movie, even I have a few of the songs and different things that are like meditation soundtracks for me. That just great soundtrack. And like you said, the action. For me, a movie's either got to be really funny or just violent.
Yeah, I love
like I know some
action as
people like,
well.
oh, we can't watch violence and but I'm like, listen, some people sexual stuff might be like the no-go for you to a movie. Some people it might be violence. If it's violence, hey, don't watch this.
Yeah.
For me, it's not violence. I'm okay watching. I'm like, I love war films, and this is like it was like war film meets Lord of the Rings. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah, it reminded me of
it.
King Arthur, you know, because that also came out around the same time. And I think there was a PG-13 version and they had like a non-rated version. And I rented the non-rated version because I wanted to see the bloodshed.
Perfect. Yes. That's another reason you should do the director's cut. There is more blood.
Okay. I like it for the realism, you know?
Yeah. For real. Yeah. I don't know. It's just fun. It just looks cool. For me, it looks especially cool when they're wearing like these like the Crusades. You know, they're all like silver, white kind of color schemes, and then the like bright red blood with that. Like, yes, killing people's bad, but also it does look extra cool.
Well, it serves for a symbolic purpose too, especially you know it's literally happened, but the blood, like by the end of the movie, all the white is completely covered in blood and dirt, and it's like, look how this holy institution where they ended up blood and bodies everywhere.
Man, yeah. But as far as like the message goes, there is near the end. I started off with some of it. He gives this big speech, and he's asking like, what is holy, what is not holy, right? He says, it's fallen to us to defend Jerusalem, and we have had our preparations as well as they can be made. None of us took this city from the Muslims. Like that was generations before. What was that? We didn't start the fire kind of song, right? And like, no Muslim of the great army now coming against us was born when the city was lost. We fight over an offense that we did not give against those who were not alive to be offended. What is Jerusalem? Your holy places lie over the Jewish temple that the Romans pulled down. The Muslim places of worship lie over yours. Which is more holy? That's where I came in at the beginning. What's more holy? The wall, the mosque, sepulcher? What is it? And he goes, no one has claimed anything. Everybody has claimed everything. And he says, we defend the city not because of the churches or the mosque or any of that stuff. We defend it for the people. And much like, you know, pulling my nerd stuff out, looking like what I loved about Thor Ragnarok, you know, Asgard's not a place, it's a people. The church is not a place, it's a people, right?
Yeah.
Like the kingdom of heaven isn't built of stones. It's built of these people. And the peace you were talking about between these different people of different religions coexisting, that's what it's about, right? Like not the literal places.
Right.
And something about that speech, when I first heard it, like chills, man. I was like, that, yes.
And like you said, just the fact that it was something that was released on a large scale in 2005 with that message, I'm surprised I didn't see a lot of like pushback, you know, on like focus on the family or something, you know?
Yeah. Because you got to think like that's before like a lot of the evangelical deconstruction stuff got really big.
Right.
When I first saw it, it was before I really started questioning a lot of stuff. So that was like one of the first things that stood out to me that I was like, oh, we might be wrong.
Interesting. Okay. So that like played a part in your own like critical thinking. Like,
yeah, like honestly, I think it played a big part of my deconstruction, even if I don't usually tell it as part of the story. Cause you know, you're just like, I watched a movie at some point during this. I'm like, no, actually I focused a lot on this for a reason.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah. Great movie. What do you think the movie was trying to say about the Crusades themselves? We kind of talk about like the main point being the people, but do you think there's also like a commentary about what the Crusades were involved in this too?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely like the classic Crusades bad kind of a thing, if you just want to put it plainly. But I do think that they did more than that, where or Ridley Scott, or he directed it, but the writer, I can't remember his name. It starts with like an M or something.
Yeah.
But I think that, it's wrapped up in Orlando's final speech, right? And not because obviously Christians are seen, there's kind of a bias, but all the religions in their fight to claim over that Holy Land is being critiqued, which I think is, kind of a pretty unique thing to a certain extent, without being like, oh yeah, religion sucks. But I think they're saying, what does he say? Who's the guy who goes into battle who was with his dad? I think he says something about like,
great question.
I can't remember his name, but he plays in Harry Potter. He plays Lupin in Harry Potter. There you go. But I think he says that holiness is what we do. And I think that's kind of the main message of like, hey, if holiness is what we do, like Crusades, not great.
It's not
holy.
Not it. Yeah. As much as for me, the big takeaway is always going to be how holy it is and sacred it is to defend people. I think the commentary on war itself also needs to be mentioned, especially right now, stuff going on in Russia, Ukraine, all that other stuff all over the world. Like, it's always important to go back to that. There's a song that my grandpa actually really liked. It was, it's called The General. I don't remember who sings it right now off the top of my head, but it's about a general. And I guess he had a dream or something, but he saw the mothers of the other people that they were killing. And he realized this war is just not worth fighting. And he told his soldiers to pack up, go home.
Right.
And he went out there and stood alone. This is how the song goes. Because he realized it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And I think it's obviously it's easy for us who in a very easy, peaceful place right now. Like, we're pretty safe relatively. To be like, war's bad, guys. Stop doing that. Obviously if I was in Ukraine, I'd probably feel a little bit different.
Right.
Like, let's go get those guys. But I think in general, we can agree peace is preferred. I think that's kind of a biblical principle, and something that stands out really well in this movie and in that song. It's a good song.
I'm going to chat The General. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, man, it's so good. But that being said, we're going to start wrapping this one up, and we always end with a question about our movie experience. Nick, we mentioned popcorn earlier. What is the most important snack for you to bring to the drive-in?
I'm going to put popcorn aside because that's just there, right?
Yeah, too easy.
Mine it's got to be Bunch of Crunch. I love Bunch of Crunch.
Those are good.
It's just nostalgic for me. Man, I love that.
When I watched the Dial of Destiny, I got Bunch of Crunch and put it in my popcorn.
100%.
Like the butter and salt on top of it. It's so good.
It's so good.
Man, I'm going to go, if it's a drive-in specifically, like I feel like the rules changed a little bit.
Okay.
For me, I need a big thing of KFC popcorn chicken.
Oh, hey.
And I know it's not, it's kind of close to popcorn, but it doesn't taste like popcorn. So I feel like it's not cheating.
I forget that you can bring your own food to drive-ins, right?
Chicken.
That's a thing.
It's great. That's like the best part. Man, I'm just bringing a cheeseburger, a fully, prepared oven roasted turkey. I don't know.
Man,
I'm eating good though.
Yeah, I think I might change my answer then. I'll go back. I'm just going to say something Taco Bell related. That's what I'm going for with the Baja Blast.
The whole Taco Bell restaurant.
It's coming with us.
We're stopping at one of those like Taco Bell / KFCs.
Yeah. Oh, let's go, dude.
Like, joint restaurant?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Nick, for watching my pick. And we look forward to yours next time in a few weeks.
Yeah.
But for now, guys, go ahead, leave us a rating and a review on Podchaser if you would, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, you can rate it and review us there too. That is also helpful. And remember, we're all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
This was an Anazao Ministries podcast. If you enjoyed this show and would like to learn more about our network, be sure to check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network.